So that took us to the situation that you described in these Yeltsin lectures, as I call them, in 1919. But then that was in the beginning of 1919. Later that year, we of course saw what happened with the municipal elections in Moscow, where there were large protests. People took to the streets, but they were crushed pretty heavily. There were mass arrests.
Mass detainers rather than arrests, not so many arrests, but still, yes, it was a very stormy summer back in Moscow. I think it cost me my membership in the Human Rights Council.
Well, that's what I was going. I was going to refer to, because you were a member of the Human Rights Council, the Presidential Human Rights Council then, and you protested these measures. What did you see happening there? What was it a reaction of the administration that you didn't foresee? Was it a surprise for you?
Was I surprised by the reaction of the government, or was I surprised by the behavior of the people?
Well, both, but especially the reaction of the government. I mean, since you were optimistic, I don't think you were very surprised about that the people took to the streets. So let's start with the reaction of the government.
I don't like the term optimism. I try to follow the data.
Okay.
So I was not surprised by what happened in Moscow because, again, I had these sociological results, and before 2019 came 2018, and a series of gubernatorial elections in the autumn of that year, in which 4 incumbents, 4 regional leaders lost the elections. So it didn't come as a surprise that elections in such a city as Moscow would attract attention as they've never done before. Previously, 4 years ago, 8 years ago, the elections of the City Duma were a purely family affair conducted within the Moscow city government. No one cared that much. But I think every expert who has the polling results knew that in 2019 it would be different. The reaction of the generalized government, we wouldn't go into details who was the decision maker here, whether it was the Moscow authorities or the presidential administration or the FSB or all of them together. They all have a say in everything that happens in Russia politically, but describing them as the powers that be.
Yes.
Their reaction was a kind of knee-jerk reaction, almost a reflex. So it also didn't come as a surprise. I could visualize, I could imagine a different scenario, a kind of managed opposition being allowed to participate in the Moscow elections with, frankly speaking, with the results, the final results being more or less the same than those that actually happened. Because what happened? There were protests. There was quite a huge, for Moscow, quite a huge wave of police repression. No one of the independent candidates was allowed to run. No one was able to register, no matter what protests, no matter what going to courts, no matter what public reaction. What next? People voted anyway, and they voted in a protest manner. A lot of them voted according to the so-called smart voting upheld by Alexei Navalny. And this, what this resulted in, United Russia, or rather the pro-Moscow government forces, the loyal forces, still held the majority. They do have the majority in the Moscow City Duma. They're able to pass the city budget. They're able to circumvent any negative initiatives on the part of the opposition. But there appeared in the City Duma new people who were not independent candidates, who were not supported directly by, for example, Navalny, but who were representatives from the so-called systemic parties, parties that are in the State Duma, like the Communist Party or LDPR or the Just Russia Party, and members of Yabloko, who were not in the Moscow City Duma for, I think, previous 8 years. But starting 2019, they are there. So the City Duma has a much more visible public presence than any of its predecessors. There's more noise. There are some results of this public pressure when it is supported by people from the inside, by the actual City Duma members. There are criminal cases opened against members who are perceived as oppositional. So there's life and noise and political activity like never before. So I do suspect, answering your question about this surprise or no surprise, now I do suspect that if the independent candidates who were trying to get in were allowed to register, and some of them won in their respective districts, the picture would have been more or less the same.